The final episode of Game of Thrones aired last Sunday, so let's break it down in the good, the bad, and the Martin. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
So there's a lot I want to get into, but before that, let me just give you a quick reminder that the podcast is now officially part of the show's podcast radio network and part of the iHeartMedia network. So you can find it on the iHeartRadio app. Just type in The Show Presents, click on Super Dario World, or type in The Show Presents Super Dario World in the podcast section, and you'll be able to find it right there. It's super easy. Or, if you prefer, you can find it on the rock1053.com page. Just go there, click on the podcast tab. You will be able to find it, Super Dario World, right there. If that does not work for you either, you can also find it in the Follow Along with the Show page. Again, rock1053.com, click on Follow Along with the Show. The updated article will be right there. If that's still not enough, you still can't find it. You can still find it on my Instagram. Just go to my Instagram, at Dario the Show. Click on my bio. The link is right there. As always, any comments, questions, or suggestions, the easiest way for you to contact me is through my Instagram. I've been getting a lot of questions regarding Game of Thrones. I've been getting a lot of questions of what I think about the story, where I think it's going to go, the books, and I'll get into that in a minute. But if that's still not good enough for you, you can still find the podcast on SoundCloud and YouTube. Just type in Super Dario World in the search bar, and it'll still be up there, I believe, until next week. Again, it all depends on when it gets authorized for iTunes. Now, I got a little bit of confusion there. I had people who told me like that didn't make any sense. So what that means is right now on iTunes, you can find Super Dario World Podcast. That's the one that's currently on there. That one will be discontinued eventually. I mean, I'll eventually phase out of it. And the one that will appear on iTunes is The Show Presents Super Dario World. So one will transition into the other. We're waiting for it to be authorized. I will be keeping you updated on all that stuff. I hope that makes some sense. But okay, remember, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. Or none of the above. They forgot to mention that there was a secret third option there that nobody had built up to yet. But anyway, okay, so the final episode of Game of Thrones aired last Sunday. It was titled The Iron Throne, and it was by far the worst-rated episode of the series yet. It depends on where you check it out, but most of the ratings give it a 4. Like I like IMDb because they tend to be at least a little bit objective, and they gave him a 4.4. So that's the worst rating the show has ever gotten. It was bad. So far, it's been universally hated. Everybody hated this ending. I talked about it on yesterday's podcast with Eddie. He joined me, and he didn't flat out say he hated it, but he was extremely disappointed. I think, like I said, Eddie loves the show too much, and I'm very hypercritical about it. But I can see why some people still love it, but overall, that ending, most people agree, was horrendous. Horrifying. I don't even know how I'm going to do the good, the bad, and the Martin. It's going to be really hard to find the good, but I'll try. So let's get into it in the good, the bad, and the Martin. Okay, so I'm going to do what I've done in previous weeks where is it that I go one good, one bad, one good, one bad, until I run out of good, and I'll have to go just keep going with the bad. And then afterwards, I'm going to close out with the Martin, which is where I share a fun fact either from the story or from the author of the books, George R.R. Martin. And so, okay, let's start off with the good. Let's start off with the best thing that happened in the last episode of Game of Thrones. And it's close to the end, but I don't care. By the way, spoiler alerts if anybody hasn't seen this, but I don't know how you could have avoided spoilers so far. It's been pretty much talked about everywhere. Every single meme I've watched about this is fantastic. But anyway, okay, so the best thing about the episode, by far the best, the only shining moment was that my boy Ghost finally got petted. Finally, somebody pet Ghost. Jesus Christ. For those of you who've been listening to this podcast, I've been complaining about nobody acknowledging Ghost for the entire fucking season. I've complained about Ghost not showing up for the past few seasons, and this season everybody ignored him. The poor dog, well, the poor wolf was bleeding, and Jon didn't even go and pet him, you know? He was probably in pain. And so finally, Jon pet Ghost, honestly, I was happy. That made everything worth it. That moment made everything worth it. Now, John doesn't deserve Ghost, clearly, but Ghost loved him, so it's okay. He got petted. It was fine. That's the only shining moment in this episode. Okay. The worst part, okay. That one is hard to pick because a lot of really bad things happened. A lot. And a lot of them didn't make any sense. But if I had to pick the worst, the absolute worst, and this is something that I talked about with Eddie, is that I feel like the authors, well, not the authors, the writers, D&D, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who, by the way, directed the last episode, they did not have the balls to commit to an ending. They tried really, really hard to give everybody somewhat of a happy ending and some kind of a bittersweet ending. And that is just bullshit. You can't please everybody. And I'll give you a perfectly clear example. Cersei and Jaime. Now, everybody wanted Cersei to get her comeuppance, and if she would have won, I would have been fine with it because that's Game of Thrones. If she would have found some way to win, good for her. Doesn't matter. But they try to make it because, okay, Cersei has to die, right? She has to. Everybody hates her. Everybody wants Cersei to die. But instead of her just getting her just desserts, she dies in the arms of her lover. I mean, it's sad because, again, she's pregnant. At that moment, she realizes how much she wants to save the baby's lives, more than hers, or she's lying, doesn't matter. But she dies in Jaime's arms. And it's a beautiful way to die. Eddie says it's like her Notebook moment. It's the way that you want to die in the arms of your lover. I mean, so she died pregnant, which sucks, but she died in the arms of her lover. So it's bittersweet, right? Well, fucking pick something. To me, that's just bullshit. If they would have just done that with one character, I get it. But they did it with everybody, or they tried really hard to do it with everybody. I'll get into it more in a little bit. So, okay, let's go back. Those are the worst things. I'll go into it little by little. So, okay. First off, what are my thoughts overall on Game of Thrones? I said this yesterday with Eddie, and overall, I believe that this show was one of the greatest build-ups to disappointment in the history of TV. It had an amazing build-up. I'll give you the build-up. The build-up was fantastic. The setup, everything was great, and they fucked up the ending. Now, the two hardest parts for any story are the beginning and the end. I remember Stephen King, I read Stephen King once saying that he said that the hardest things are the beginning and the end. And so sometimes you know the ending, but you fuck up the end. The endings are super hard. You're never going to please everybody, so you kind of have to just go with what feels right with the story. Otherwise, you're going to end up doing a Deus Ex Machina, where the author out of nowhere saves the characters, and it's just bullshit, and the audience knows it, so it leaves you with a bitter feeling. Endings are very, very hard. It's a lot easier to fuck up an ending than it is to give you a great ending. So my policy always is just go with what feels logical. Don't try to force it. There's a rule in writing that says, and I follow this rule, never fall in love with a line. Or actually, never fall in love with anything. Never fall in love with a character. Never fall in love with anything. Because sometimes deleting that character, erasing that line, erasing that scene may make everything worse. It might be the best scene, the best line, the best character. But with it in there, nothing makes sense. So sometimes you got to be cold-hearted, you got to be brutal, and just delete your best stuff. Because otherwise the story doesn't make sense. And so far, my issue with D&D is that they did not have the balls to just delete stuff. I mean, they erased a big chunk of A Song of Ice and Fire. There's so many plot lines, so many characters that did not show up on screen, but the characters that they had, the plots that they had, I mean the main ones, because they killed off the Dorne plot, they killed off the Tyrell plot, they killed off a lot of plots because they didn't know what to do with them. But the main characters, they were always protected by plot armor. They did not have the heart to get rid of them. And in fact, I heard that they suffered getting rid of Lyanna Mormont, which is bullshit. Who cares about Lyanna Mormont? Anyway, so you can't ever fall in love with your characters, with a line, with anything, because you have to be brutal when you're editing it. That's just a rule. That's a rule that I follow. And so when you're coming up to the end, if it's not the end you planned from the beginning, if it's not the end that you wanted, doesn't matter. It's the ending. It's where the logical conclusion ended. Or if you really want it to be the ending, that one particular ending, you're the writer. You're just going to have to go back and set it up. It's honestly, it's not that hard to set certain things up. Sometimes all you need is one particular line that could change everything, that could make things make sense. They just didn't, or they didn't do it throughout the show, and they didn't do it well. So my big issue there is, again, great build-up, amazing setup. They set up a great world, and then they broke all the rules of that world, and we ended up with a clusterfuck that nobody really understood. And their biggest crime was that they had an extra year to finish this season. They had an extra year to work on this, to work on the script, to work on everything, but they kind of took the cop-out in every sense. And I'll get into that a little bit more when I break down scene by scene. But so far, again, overall consensus, the show, great, amazing, fantastic build-up, crappy delivery. At the end, it just led to disappointment, and they disappointed everybody so far unanimously. I haven't heard a single person being like, you know what, that was a good ending. No, it's been universally hated, and that's really impressive. It's a very impressive thing to do. These dudes stood on the shoulder of a giant, and then fell flat on their face. It would be brutal if it wasn't so hysterical to watch from my perspective, because I've been complaining about it for years. It sucks. I felt bad for people who will honestly were very invested in this, and to just see their hearts break. My heart broke a long time ago. I'm very jaded on this show. So to me, it's been mostly just enjoyable to see how it gets fucked up and to make fun of the show. But it sucks seeing people go through it for the first time. It's bad. It's like I read the books before the Red Wedding happened, so I knew what was coming. I knew what was going to happen to these characters, and I just kept hearing everybody like, oh no, Rob, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, Greywind, oh, Caitlin, everybody. And I was just like, don't get your hopes up, buddy. This is going to sting. But again, it's rough. I understand you. I've been there. It's heartbreaking for everybody. Nobody wanted this, okay? We're all united. Book fans didn't want it. Show fans didn't want it. Nobody wanted this. But okay. Honestly, right now, I'm happy. I'm not happy because of the ending, but I'm happy because I feel freer. I feel lighter. I feel like a source of stress in my life is gone. I'm happy that it happened, but I'm happy that it's done. That's the easiest way I can say this. But okay. So a few things that I liked. Again, I liked that there was a bit of a nod to the Lord of the Rings in this ending. And George R. R. Martin based a lot of his work on Lord of the Rings, and sometimes specifically trying to not be Lord of the Rings. So, I mean, I don't know if it was an insult or something to do an Lord. For example, Sam writing, or at least titling A Song of Ice and Fire. So it ending with the book that was written. It's similar to the Lord of the Rings. John going off into the wilderness. Again, very Lord of the Ringsy. The crowning of Sansa, the crowning of Bran. Well, which, by the way, I'll get into that later. So, again, kind of Lord of the Ringsy, which was fine. I liked Lord of the Rings. I appreciated the nod. Hopefully you did as well. But anyway, okay, so let's start. This episode starts with Tyrion walking down the streets of King's Landing for like 10 fucking minutes. Seriously, like, the over half of this episode was people just walking down the streets, walking, the camera following somebody from behind. There was so much walking in this fucking episode. It's your final episode. How about if you wrap things up? Don't just show somebody walking. Tyrion, legit, I took the time. He walked for like 5 minutes in his opening scene. It was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous amount of just watching Tyrion walking. And I get what they were doing. They were trying to show the horrors of all the dead people and stuff. You could have done it a little bit quicker. And then, you could have actually developed the story, finished it up, wrapped it up in a very nice way. But no, they wanted to show people walking because of, if you show people walking, then you don't have to write dialogues. And that's where the show kind of died off. I was actually having this conversation with somebody that as soon as they stopped giving people like more dialogues, that's when the show kind of died. Because people don't have conversations in the show anymore, or they don't have important conversations. They should be screaming at each other over the issues that they're having, and they don't. They just don't have conversations, which is really weird. They just say one thing, say another, and then they walk their separate paths. No, you sit there and you argue. You should be arguing things. It's a political drama. Conversations were great. Some of the lines in this show were fantastic. Some of the conversations were fantastic. Go back to the better seasons. They talk things out for a really long time, or at least they leave the characters in a room sitting there talking together. This season, nobody really talked about anything except Tyrion and Varys about betraying Daenerys. But anyway, okay. So Tyrion is walking around King's Landing, and I don't know if it's ash or snow that's falling. At first, I thought it was ash, but I guess it was snow, which really makes no sense, but whatever. Snow's falling. He's walking around. There's a zombie that walks nearby him. And other than it looked okay. The city looked, again, the design people were great. They're fantastic. Set designers, costume designers, great. They're fantastic. But it really didn't make much sense why we see Tyrion walking around so much. But okay. So, good. Costume design, set design, bad. No point for him walking. Then Jon reaches Grey Worm, and I guess this is where the episode really starts. Jon reaches Grey Worm, and Grey Worm is about to execute some prisoners. Now, I've said this before. You do not just execute prisoners of war. It's not a thing. At least not in our world and not in Westeros. Usually you take them prisoners, and then you ransom them off, or if they're just small folks serving their lord, they don't have an animus against you. They're just doing their jobs. If they don't serve their lord, they'll die. They're just small folks. They're just people. In the end, they didn't do anything to you. So Grey Worm wants to execute some prisoners of war. Jon rightfully tries to stop him. And in the end, because they had the superior force, the Unsullied win, and Grey Worm kills the people. Now, this was a missed opportunity, because they could have shown one of the Lannisters, just one, pleading for his life. Like, I would have begged and pleaded to Jon to not let me die at the hands of some foreigner. Just save me, protect me. Like, I'm innocent. I'll do whatever you want. I've surrendered. Please, my lord, please save me. I surrender. I swear to God, I don't care about the queen. The queen's dead. I'll serve the dragon queen. I don't care. Please save me. Save me. I have a child. I have a wife. I have a child. Please save me. That would have made that death have a little bit more weight. I mean, if the million people who were killed before didn't really matter, that would have made Jon it would have pulled at his heartstrings, you know? It would have made that death a little bit more heavy. It would have made it heavy. It would have had more weight, and it would have made Grey Worm look a bit more heartless. So, again, missed opportunity there. I do not understand why they did that, because it ended up biting them in the ass further on. So, okay. Grey Worm executes some people. Jon just kind of walks away and lets it happen, even though he said, don't do that, and then he did. So, it was like, okay, a dick measuring contest against the eunuch, and he lost. That's not good. And then the next ridiculous thing that happens is Tyrion finds Jaime and Cersei's bodies. Now, how the fuck that happened makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Well, first off, the body should have been turned to jelly at that point. The only thing that legit should have survived from Jaime was his hand. Everything else should have been turned into fucking jelly. Like, a fucking castle fell on them. Come on. But how did Tyrion find them? I guess you could argue that he knew the route they were going to take, and he kind of just went for it. Now, I would have done it differently. I would have made Tyrion go through the outside of the castle, see that the boat was still there, and then maybe go in through the back, and then try to actually see if he can find the bodies. Because at first, he doesn't know what he's looking for. He doesn't know if they're there or not. So I would have, but again, they had to use all that time for him walking, you know? They had to show him walking instead of him showing actually doing something that would lead him to find the bodies. But anyway, that's forgivable. And Jaime and Cersei had to appear in the last episode because I think it's in their contract. Dude, Jaime got paid $1 million to just lay on Cersei's boobs for a scene. That's a paycheck right there, man. That's the best $1 million ever made. Good on you, man. I don't remember, Nicholas something? Good on you, man. Anyway, I need to slow down. I'm going too fast. I just realized that I'm going too fast. I'm too excited. I need to slow down. Okay. So the next thing that happens is that Jon goes to see Daenerys, and she makes her big fucking speech in front of her giant army, which, I mean, we saw the army die in Winterfell, but whatever. They said that it was only half, and so we saw her standing in front of half her army, and she makes her big fascist speech where basically she says, we will bring peace through war. We will bring good through death. For those of you who don't listen to me, well, there's a joke about Stalin. What was the joke? It was, if half your population is unhappy, kill that half, and then everybody's gonna be happy. So that's the way to achieve paradise. It's not exactly like that, but it's kind of similar. So a lot of interesting things happen there. First off, she makes that speech in Valyrian, which neither Jon doesn't speak, and last episode we saw that Tyrion barely spoke. So how those two understood every single thing she said makes no fucking sense to me. And how the fuck did Grey Worm beat Jon to getting there? I mean, we assumed that Jon did not take any breaks. He just went straight there. He could have, but I mean, why? What does he have to do that's more important than go talk to the queen? And still, Grey Worm used his teleportation powers, and he beat Jon to where Daenerys was going to land. All right, it's a ridiculous thing, but doesn't matter. He watches Daenerys do her speech, doesn't understand a thing. Tyrion quits his job, rightfully. And this is one of the parts that irks me. Why did Daenerys not just kill Tyrion right then and there? He did not only betray her, he flat out insulted her in her moment of victory, in front of all of her troops, in front of all of her supporters, and she just, imprisoned him? For what? What do you expect to get out of him anymore? You don't need him. You should have just killed him. I mean, you just killed 1 million people. Another imp? Barely a blip on the radar. But no, she imprisons him because Tyrion has his plot armor, and you can't beat that fucking plot armor. Anyway, from there, Daenerys walks off. Jon doesn't say a fucking word, and out of nowhere, Arya pops up, right? So there was the whole fucking Dothraki army, the whole fucking Unsullied army, and, well, I mean, she already sneaked past the entire dead army, and nobody stopped her. So I guess armies don't affect Arya. She just popped up next to Jon. Here's the funny thing. The last episode, we saw how fast Arya moved. She's not that sneaky. She's not that fast. And so her just sneaking up on Jon and popping up right next to him makes no sense. Arya, I hate that she keeps switching from the scared little girl into the badass assassin. Pick one. Or pick somebody in the middle. Just this whole flip-flopping thing just makes no sense, and it's super annoying. But I guess I don't have to worry about that anymore. Anyway, Arya catches up to Jon and says maybe the dumbest phrase in the history of the show. Like, she says, she's a killer, I can tell. I'm not exactly sure if that's how she says it. I think that's what she says. She's a killer, I can tell. Or I know a killer when I see one. Thank you, Captain Obvious. I mean, her killing an entire fucking city was not enough for Jon to figure it out. No, thank you, Arya. Without you saying that, Jon would never have been able to figure out that Daenerys is a psycho killer. Thank you. Your presence in this episode was invaluable. Thank you. Your service was fantastic. Tip your waiter on the way out. Duh, Jesus Christ. Anyway. One thing that I liked Daenerys in the Magneto suit. She looked really cool. Just a random thing. She looked, honestly, like, look at the first X-Men. She looks kind of like Magneto if Magneto was wearing leather. And if you notice, the leather on her arms kind of has scales like a reptile. It looked really cool. Again, costume design, fantastic. Visually, fantastic. Problem is, no fucking sense. But okay. And I feel like I kind of went off track here. I went on a rant. And so let's go back to a thing that I like. A thing that I liked, I actually enjoyed the conversation between Tyrion and Jon. And I found it hysterical that Tyrion had finally explained why Daenerys was crazy. I mean, I can't believe they needed to spell it out because I've been yelling this for years that the chick's insane. But Tyrion put it in an interesting perspective. It was fine. He spelled it out for everybody. She did all this bunch of crazy shit before. She's been consistent with being crazy. The only problem is that before, she was crazy against the people we didn't like. Now she's being crazy with innocence. And so, whoopsie. I mean, I guess Varys was right. And so, I appreciated that. I appreciated that somebody finally acknowledged that Jon Snow is Jesus fucking Christ. They didn't do anything with it. That plot line went nowhere fast, huh? Nowhere. Irrelevant. Like, why did they even kill him? Kill him and brought him back to life. They didn't do anything with it. They could have done so much with a Jesus Christ character, but no, it was irrelevant. But at least it was mentioned. Tyrion mentioned it. At least it showed that he was somewhat aware. I don't know. So I liked that all those things were explained, but I did not like Jon's reaction there. Jon didn't make any sense. For the last season, the dude's just kind of been there. He's done things, but he's been irrelevant. To the story, he's been somewhat irrelevant. Honestly, think of one important thing that Jon did this last season. I can wait. Did he... No. Did he kill the... Nope. Did he stop the... Nope. Jon has done nothing. Literally nothing this past season. And so he was supposed to be the hero of the story, Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised. And I mean, I don't believe in those theories, but they needed somebody to do it. And so far it seems throughout the episode they'd been building up Jon to be this reluctant leader. He's been the reluctant leader all the time, because Jon doesn't want to do anything. He's kind of has to do it kicking and screaming, and he's kind of forced into the leadership roles, which is fine. But this season, he really didn't do it. He was just honestly an extra. Him and Davos did basically the same things. In fact, I think Davos was a slightly bit more useful, but whatever. Anyway, so he did nothing until he went and talked to Daenerys. Now, it was a nod, I guess, to the books about how big the throne should be. And because in the books, the Iron Throne is gigantic. It's ginormous. I mean, 1,000 swords. Think about that. Daenerys saying that, I thought 1,000 swords would be really tall. They are. It's gigantic. It's a gigantic throne. Google it one day. The Iron Throne and A Song of Ice and Fire. That thing is what? I don't know what to say, but at least 3 humans high. I'll give you that. Like 18 feet, 20 feet maybe. That thing is ginormous and super heavy. So I appreciated that nod, and I kind of enjoyed Jon's shut the fuck up moment as Daenerys is prattling on like a little girl, like, oh yes, my dreams, blah, blah. And Jon's like, shut up, bitch. You just killed the fucking city. Not just a part of it. You just killed the fucking city, you fucking psycho. And now, I did not hate this scene because I hated Daenerys. I've always hated Daenerys. I always wanted Daenerys to die. Why? Because she's been a psycho, and I don't like psychos. And also, she's been really petty. So I was okay with Daenerys getting killed. I did not like how anticlimactic it was and how lame it was. I was talking about this with my kid brother, that there should have been more weight in that scene. It was the death of Daenerys, and honestly, it didn't really feel like it was that big of a moment, that big of a deal, if that makes any sense. So what I felt that should have done, and I hate saying this, because if you listen to the first episode, you'll notice that I'm kind of going against with what I said in my very first podcast, the things that I did not want to happen. But D&D have this superpower. I'll give it to the producer of the show. D&D have the superpower of making me hate that I got what I wanted, and making me want what I did not want to happen. So, how would I have made the situation a little bit heavier? How would I have made it a better scene, the death of Daenerys? Just Jon and Daenerys talking. I honestly would have made Daenerys tempt Jon more. There should have been more temptation. There should have been more at stake for Jon. Because at that point, he's already rejected her. So it's like killing your ex. I mean, I'm not saying you should kill your ex. I'm not saying I would ever kill my ex, ever. But if you have to kill the love of your life, or you have to kill your ex, who'd you pick? Which one would be easier? One's harder than the other, for sure. So, imagine if they hadn't really broken up for that stupid reason. Again, this whole Aegon Targaryen plotline has been stupid and led nowhere. Because if they would have been still kind of lovey-dovey couple, then this moment, the moment you realize, holy shit, the woman that I love is insane, it would have made the death way, way more relevant. It would have made the scene heavier. So, Daenerys is trying to tempt Jon even more, like through love. She's trying to tempt him with love. So it's like, accept my craziness, love me for who I am. We can make this world a better place. And I'll give it to Jon. Jon asked some pretty reasonable questions. Jon's been kind of a vanilla character, but he asks reasonable questions throughout the show. He asked really reasonable questions. In that scene, he asked, "Well, how do we know that we're good? Or how do we know that other people don't know what's good?" And that's when Daenerys gives the answer. They're like, well, they don't get to choose. And that's when you're like, damn it, this bitch is crazy. But if you love a person, then they can convince you more. They can manipulate you more. So if they would have kept that together, and you know what? I'll throw this at the end. And this again, I'm going back with what I said in my very first podcast. If Daenerys, after she gets stabbed, or right before she gets stabbed, she tells Jon, I'm pregnant, then holy shit, stakes get raised so fucking much, and now Jon having killed her or having to kill her has so much more weight. It explains why he kind of just blanks out, why he doesn't give a fuck about anything anymore. It would have made everything so much more meaningful. And again, D&D have a way of making me want what I didn't want before. Because, again, first episode of my podcast, I said, I do not want Daenerys to be pregnant with Jon's baby. But now, to fix their fucking fuck up, I'm saying if Daenerys Targaryen would have said, it could have been a lie, but if she would have said at that moment that she was pregnant with Jon's baby, and so Jon not only has to choose between the quote-unquote love of his life and his child, that makes his decision way harder. The audience would have been like, oh my God, is he going to do it? Can he do it? Would he be willing to do it? So, like I said, it would have given way more weight to that scene. And it kind of goes with the Azor Ahai prophecy about tempering your steel to create light. Okay, the Azor Ahai prophecy, in the story of Azor Ahai, the dude wants to create the sword called Lightbringer, which is going to be the sword that kills the most powerful sword ever, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But basically, he tries tempering it in water, it breaks. He tries tempering it in a lion's heart, it breaks. And then he tempers it by piercing the heart of his one true love. So that's how he gets Lightbringer. And that's the sword that he uses to fight the darkness, blah, blah, blah. I mean, at this point, you don't really need to fight the darkness, but whatever. The point is, he kills Daenerys, and then when Drogon comes up, he gets Drogon. Because there's a theory going on, is it a real sword or is it just a weapon? And a dragon could be a fire weapon. So it kind of would have made a little bit more sense because you're tempering your steel. But no, they went for the cop-out all around. And let me get a little bit deeper into this because I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface. So, Jon kills Daenerys with his baby in his belly. He makes a choice between insanity because he sees how crazy Daenerys has become. He sees her. He sees her for who he is. He loves her, but he sees her for who he is. He sees the future of the Seven Kingdoms, and he's like, oh no, fuck this shit. We can't just bring paradise through death. That's insanity. So he makes the choice for the good of the realm, to quote my boy Varys, and he kills her. All right? He makes the ultimate sacrifice. Now, the hero has made the ultimate sacrifice, and this could go multiple ways. If Drogon shows up and kills him, that's fine. Honestly, that's okay. Here's how I would have done it. Because I fucking hate that Drogon just showed up, destroyed the Iron Throne, because to me, that was a cop-out. To me, that was... The writers were not able to decide who they wanted to sit the Iron Throne, so then they were like, hey, how about if we just destroy the Iron Throne? Oh my God, it's genius! Totally, right? Nobody's gonna see it coming. No way! Anyway, so that's how I pictured D&D talking to each other, like total bros. Anyway, so they thought they were being clever by destroying the throne, which makes no sense. I mean, I saw a meme that was pretty funny, that Drogon shows up and he sees, Daenerys is being stabbed by a pointy thing. He's like, pointy thing? And then he looks up at the throne, bigger pointy thing. You son of a bitch! And that's why he burned the throne, which makes perfect logic in Pokemon world, but whatever. Okay, so it made no sense that he just showed up and he did not attack Jon. It would have been the way that I would have done it better. Again, same situation. I would not have brought things up to that point. But same situation, what I would have done is Grey Worm shows up, he sees, okay, Drogon is just staring Jon down in fury. And Grey Worm shows up, and he sees that Daenerys is dead, he looks at Jon, he sees that they're stabbed, and he yells at Drogon, Dracarys! And Drogon kind of just looks back at Grey Worm, looks back at Jon, and starts to prepare to throw the flame, but he turns back and he shoots fire at the Unsullied. So at that point you're like, holy shit, well, dragons don't just listen to anybody. They listen to particular people. So in spite of Jon killing Daenerys, Drogon knows who he's going to follow. He's going to follow the Targaryen, and it kind of makes sense to the way that Drogon had looked at Jon before. Anyway, so Jon at that point, Drogon is kind of under... Oh, by the way, Grey Worm manages to dodge, and Grey Worm just kind of shoots at the Unsullied and just takes Daenerys and leaves because screw you guys. I mean, I don't have to listen to you, but I'm not going to kill you. I mean, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to listen to you. So he kind of leaves and starts setting the castle ablaze, which would have been a lot of fun. Like, imagine Drogon just finishing up what he started, destroying the castle. Grey Worm runs up to Jon with maybe one or two Unsullied who dodged. Jon is like, you know what, dude, he's not fighting back. He's ready to die. He's like, I just killed my own child, probably. I'm okay with whatever fate brings me. Like, Jon could have been ready to be killed by the dragon. I accept that. That would have been okay. So Jon's ready to die. Grey Worm is walking up to him. He's going to kill him. Out of nowhere, Arya shows up. She starts fighting the Unsullied. And then, to save Arya, Jon joins in the fight. And it's the two of them against the Unsullied. And may the best man win, right? While the castle's burning. That would have been way more interesting to watch. It would have actually given us some action. It would have been, honestly, a more fitting end to Grey Worm. Or Jon. Doesn't matter. Or Arya. So I would have preferred that because, again, stuff is happening. But let's assume that didn't happen. I argued this with another friend that there should have at least been a trial by combat between Jon and Grey Worm, because that would have it would have meant that Jon's life, Jon's destiny was in his hands. The problem is that the way things ended, Jon was kind of, again, just along for the ride. He killed Daenerys, and then he's just along for the ride. The dude he never had a choice in his life, ever. He just kind of went through the motions always, which I guess is consistent. But at the end, you're supposed to be the hero. You're supposed to take action. Take control of your own destiny. Finish your story taking control of your own destiny, and he never did. So it was lame to see the quote-unquote hero of the story reduced to just nothing. Like, just a carry-on. Basically, Jon was a carry-on. It made no sense. It was sad. It's a sad ending to a story. And I don't mean sad and like, oh, that was so sad, it was beautiful. No, I mean that's just like, that was pathetic. Anyway, so now we move on to the half of the show that just completely made no fucking sense. Because up to that point, they could have done something interesting. They could have shown us stuff. They could have done something. The moment that Jon kills Daenerys, so many things could have happened. They could have shown us Grey Worm trying to arrest him. They could have shown us, riots in King's Landing. They could have shown us the freaking Unsullied taking power. They could have done so much, but they showed to go fade to black and show us 3 weeks later Tyrion going to a trial, I guess, or a parlay. Everybody just sitting there. It was a council of Stark family members. From the Riverlands you got Edmure Tully, who's Sansa's uncle, and from the Vale you got Sweet Robin, who's her cousin. So it was basically a big family reunion of people who hate the Lannisters. But okay. Tyrion shows up, and I don't get why Grey Worm gets so much power in this scene. Grey Worm's been a secondary character throughout the show. Barely a secondary character. And now, all of a sudden, he's a shot caller. He's calling the shots at this meeting. I get, if you have control of the city, I guess why you could say that, but it's a city of ashes. I mean, you don't hold much, guy. The city was destroyed. I guess you could hold on to it a little bit longer, but it's not what it used to be. But anyway, okay. Tyrion shows up to this meeting, and a whole bunch of crazy goes on. Now, I will admit, there was a point where I was excited when they were trying to choose their new king, and I was like, oh my god, Gendry. Because Gendry, I've said it before, he's the rightful heir. The last king, as soon as Daenerys legitimizes him, Gendry became the rightful heir. He has the best claim. Because the last king was a Baratheon. Gendry is Robert Baratheon's son. They won by right of conquest. So technically, Gendry has the best claim out of anybody there. I mean, Jon technically has the best claim. Jon should have been like, F you, I'm Aegon Targaryen, which saying that almost made me throw up, but whatever. Jon should have been like, F you, Grey Worm, I'm Aegon Targaryen. I called the shots here. I'm the new king. Daenerys was fucking insane. You're insane too. And honestly, he should have just killed him. I mean, Jon Grey Worm or Grey Worm Jon, either one. But okay, I can't go back. I need to keep going forward. Okay, so there's this meeting where apparently they're doing a parlay for Tyrion and Jon. I do not understand anything that happens in this show from this point. Because, okay, you got a prisoner. And Grey Worm says, shut up, you're a prisoner. You can't say anything. And then Tyrion gets to pick the king. Which made no fucking sense. Let me go through my notes, because I took a whole bunch of notes. Like, you should see, I have 3 pages full of things that I noticed. So, okay, let's start with, okay, I already mentioned this, but who the fuck would listen to Grey Worm? Why would anybody listen to Grey Worm? I don't know, but I guess, like I said before, he had military control of the city at that point, a city that was completely destroyed, but whatever. That's why he gets some attention. Poor Edmure, man. He was brought back just to be embarrassed. That was so sad. I mean, would you let your niece talk to you that way? I don't think so. In medieval times, would you let any woman, your niece, medieval times, you're a lord. You're the lord of the Riverlands, and you're going to let your niece talk to you that way, humiliate you in front of everybody? I mean, Edmure's always been kind of a dumbass, but eesh, that was rough. Poor Edmure. Like, if I would have been the actor, I would have been pissed. Well, I don't think so. I mean, he was happy to be on the last episode. I'd be happy too, I guess, if I think about it. So, okay. I loved that Sam's idea got laughed at. That was a good thing. That Sam's idea of democracy got laughed at. Because, I mean, it's something that's never going to work. I was worried that they were going to trying to end things with a democracy. I'm so happy they didn't, because it makes no fucking sense in that world. Because, again, you can't have a popular vote when a lot of people don't know how to fucking read, and a majority of the people live in one single area. So it would have been stupid. Democracy would have been stupid. So I'm happy that Sam got laughed at and humiliated there. But Tyrion's idea is not that different. Actually, Tyrion's idea is kind of worse. It's the Romans tried doing something similar. That okay, one representative from the biggest house, and we'll pick one of us. That's not going to work. And because whatever house has the most power at that time is the one that's going to get picked, right? And if they don't get picked, then they have the largest army, and they're probably going to just take it by force. And also this whole thing about, well, okay, there's so many things, but let's start from the beginning. Bran gets chosen because, according to Tyrion, he has the best story. No, he has the worst story. We've seen Bran's story. We've followed Bran for years. There was a whole season that Bran didn't show up because he had nothing to do. So, Bran... Okay, let me see. Okay, you have a little girl who gets kidnapped several times, tries to escape and find her family. Then she gets they try to ransom her multiple times, so she decides to become an expert assassin and kills the ultimate evil in the world. That's a decent story. Then you got Sansa's story, a girl who's been held hostage throughout her life, finally manages to free herself, is consolidating the North, is uniting the people of the North. It gets vengeance on the people who raped and tortured her. It gets vengeance on the people who kidnapped her. That's a better story. Edmure Tully. Dude was in 2 wars, and then he gets kidnapped, and they threaten to throw his baby with a catapult, so he has to submit in order to save his family's life. That's more interesting. Freaking, okay, Samwell Tarly killed a white. Sam the Slayer. His story's better. Gendry's story. The bastard son of the king, who the queen tries to assassinate him as soon as the king dies because they don't want him to take his rightful claim. He's a blacksmith. He's actually skillful. He created the weapons that killed the whites. He's been fighting a war. He learned how to become a warrior. He went out on the expedition that tried to stop and create peace, and then he went and fought the army of the dead. So there were so many better stories out there than Bran's. Actually, I think the only worst one is probably Sweet Robin's, because he does even less than Bran, but whatever. Bran didn't do shit. That's the point. Bran didn't do shit. We saw him. He did squat. Honestly, and I said this before, if you take Bran out of the story, the moment he leaves Winterfell, take him out of the story, nothing changes. Except the end. But now the end. But yeah, every single thing Bran did, pointless. Him telling Jon that he's Aegon Targaryen, how would that have changed a thing? Tell me how that changed a thing. Nothing. Daenerys would have still gone crazy because she was crazy. Jon would have still had to kill her. Didn't really matter. So, a whole lot of nothing happened. Bran was nearly freaking useless throughout the show. And as a king, you can see him be kind of useless as well. He's like, okay, you guys solve all these problems. I'm going to go get a dragon, I guess. I'm going to go be high. So, that was stupid. Picking Bran was stupid. He was the worst choice. But okay, so Tyrion suggests Bran, which made no fucking sense, but everybody agrees, except Sansa, the only fucking voice of reason in that scene. The only voice of reason, Sansa. And she says, well, Bran doesn't want it, and he can't have kids. To which Tyrion responds, oh, well, then we won't have the king's son to torment us. Okay. and except that the next king going to be what? Celibate? Is he going to be a eunuch? Is he also going to be a cripple? What the fuck? The next king will have kids. So, what the thing that makes Bran really different is that he's the three-eyed raven and he can't have kids. So, I mean, he's a cripple and the three-eyed raven. The next king is going to be a guy. All right? And he's going to be the guy with the most power in the 6 kingdoms now. Because, again, Sansa then decides, you know what? Screw this. Like, everybody, all y'all, I'm going to just take my ball and I'm going to leave this game. Screw you guys. You don't know what you're doing. Which is fine. I accept that. If all the kingdoms would have broken up, I think it would have been better. But you got the 6 kingdoms. The north separates. And you could... Asha Greyjoy's face, well, I guess in the show it's Yara, I guess. Yara Greyjoy's face is hysterical. Her face, like, we could do that? What? I didn't know we could do that. So at that point, if everybody else would have broken out, it would have been better. Because what the fuck did the fucking Iron Islands care about Bran? Seriously, what does Dorne care about Bran? The dude didn't even have a single line. The Vale I can understand a little bit because they're family. The Riverlands, again, I can understand. But I don't understand why Sansa could just, you know what? Screw you guys, I'm going to go be a queen. While everybody else, it's like, your little brother gets crowned king, and he's like, no, I'm not going to accept my little brother being king. I want to be queen. And so, screw you, Bran. I'm going to be the queen of the north because fuck you. And that's it. It's cute, Bran. Whatever you say, I'm going to be the queen of myself. So, whatever. It was fine. I mean, it would have broken the wheel. It would have mean everybody was separate, and it would have cost way more wars. But it would have been better than 6 of them staying together and one just being like, peace out. Made no sense. But the way that I look at it is now the Starks have their own kingdom in the north, and they have the king of the 6 kingdoms. So either way, they're in control of everything. And again, their uncle is the Lord of the Riverlands. Their cousin is the Lord of the Vale. So they have control of everything, pretty much. And if Arya would have married Gendry, then they would have had somebody in the Stormlands too. So either way, they're dominating everywhere. Which makes no sense because I don't think the Stark have any men left. Well, I mean, 10,000 Northmen popped out of nowhere because of reasons. I mean, why didn't they send those 10,000 Northmen before, to fight Cersei? But whatever. Doesn't matter. Okay, so the North is independent. The Iron Islands were like, what the fuck? I mean, we couldn't do that. And then Tyrion gets chosen as Hand of the King. Now, I'll accept the logic from Bran here, and I thought it was kind of like a nice little burn for Tyrion. Tyrion being like, oh, well, I don't want to be king. I don't want to be the Hand. And Bran like, well, I don't want to be king. So, haha. The thing is, Tyrion has been a terrible Hand throughout the show. He has the worst record. Why in hell does anybody listen to Tyrion? This idea that he proposed is the worst idea possible. Just look at ancient Rome. It did not work because whoever has the most power... Okay, there's something in history. Okay, throughout history, whenever there's a regime change, there's death. Death follows. After every single regime change, death has followed. The first time in history that there was a peaceful regime change was the United States, when we switched from one president from one party to a president in the other, and there was no bloodshed. First time in history. And because the U.S. was set up... The Constitution of the U.S. is actually pretty interesting. It's kind of set up for the worst case scenario. They were assuming that the people are idiots, and so it was thinking of the worst case scenario, and that helped a lot. Also, the mentality of the country, it's a different country. The U.S. is a different country. It was founded with way different. It was founded way differently than most of the countries. But anyway, so throughout history, up to that point, whenever there's a regime change, death follows. So if I get voted king, because let's say I have the largest army. I am Sir Bronn of Highgarden, and since the Reach usually has the largest army, because there's the most food means the most people, I have the largest army, and also I'm Bronn, so I'm kind of deadly. I go up to the Council of Street Robin and Edmure Tully, and who else? And Gendry, and the Prince of Dorne, who doesn't even have a fucking name, and Davos. Let's say Davos is there too. And he's like, I think I should be king. Why? Because otherwise I will kill all you fuckers, and my armies will destroy your castles because I have 100,000 men, and at most you guys have like 10,000. So bring it, bitches. And then everybody will be like, okay, fine, Bronn wins. And when Bronn dies, his kids would be like, well, we still have the largest army. Yo, but we're supposed to vote in the next king. Well, fuck you, guy. I have the largest army. And so this is going to become a dictatorship now. Or they're just going to become tyrants. So that's why that system doesn't work. Whoever has the most power. There's pros and cons to democracy. There are pros and cons to monarchies. There are pros and cons to everything. But that system is the worst of both. Like, by far the worst. And I'm not shocked that it's a Tyrion idea. Anyway, I've ranted on for this too long. Okay, let's move on to something else. So in that council, it's assumed that they decide that Jon Snow will be sent to the Wall. Now, this is interesting for many reasons. First off, you don't just get sent to the Wall, you kind of have to choose the Wall. Does that make any sense? You choose to go to the Wall. If you remember, Ned Stark got the option to confess, ask for forgiveness, and ask to be sent to the Wall. So you request going to the Wall. Tyrion, similar thing. During his trial, Tywin gave him the option of just, confess and we'll send you to the Wall. We'll make sure you survive. So it's not something that you just get sentenced to the Wall. If you're a lord. If you're a lowborn, you're kind of screwed. Mostly. You have to be like a really terrible guy to not get an option, which I don't think at that point Jon was. But whatever. So the legitimate heir doesn't get a say in it. And this is the crazy part. This is the insanity part for me. Grey Worm went into that discussion and walked away with absolutely nothing. Right? He had the hostage, which was Jon and Tyrion. He had hostages, Jon and Tyrion. He had the city. And he gave up both of them and left. So, a thing that I don't get. As soon as frickin' Grey Worm got on his ships, the Unsullied left, what made anybody listen to him at all? Why would anybody care what this frickin' dude cares? Honestly, like, no, Jon has to go. He has to give up everything, blah, blah. Really? Would you be that trusting? Or wouldn't you just say, all right, fine, he lives, but I take him as a prisoner? Something? I don't know. It made no sense. Grey Worm walked out of there with nothing. Absolutely nothing. He gave up everything and won nothing. Jon got sent to the north, where he was born, where he kind of lived his entire life, where he spent most of his career with the wildlings. And other things that don't make sense in this same vein. So the north, the Wall is in the north, which means that's under the kingdom of Sansa now, because Sansa's going to be the queen. And Sansa doesn't just pardon him. Bran doesn't just pardon him, even though he's the rightful heir and he never gave up his claim, but whatever. They don't ever just say, like, you know what, you're pardoned, now the Grey Worm's gone, fuck it. Or why does Bran say what Jon does if it's not in his kingdom? All right? The Wall, the Night's Watch, first off, I don't know why the Night's Watch exists anymore, and I thought it was super meta that Jon said, like, Jon was the one that asked, does the Night's Watch exist anymore? Like, why? It was supposed to protect us from the Night King, and he's dead, or from the Wildlings, and they're our friends now. I let him through. I'm the guy who let the Wildlings through. We're cool. So what's the purpose of the Night's Watch anymore? But anyway, so it doesn't make sense on several levels. Honestly, my head started hurting right now just trying to think on how many levels it didn't make any fucking sense. But okay, Jon gets sent, but the king of the 6 kingdoms sends Jon, the rightful heir of the 7 kingdoms, to the Night's Watch that no longer has a purpose and is in the kingdom of the north, which is, the queen is technically his cousin? Yes, at that point his cousin, but grew up as his sister. It doesn't make any sense any way you put it, but whatever. Jon left the stupid man bun behind, and I immediately respected him more. And again, this would have been a perfect opportunity by a trial by combat against Grey Worm. Again, because that way Jon is just not, he's not just going through the motions. Somebody else, he's just a pawn. No, if he's the hero of the story, he's the hero of the story. At least destiny is in his own hands. You know, he could have been like, fine, trial by combat, fuck it, or something. But no, they wanted to give everybody their bittersweet ending, which for Grey Worm, the bittersweet ending is that he left to Noth, the island of Noth, which in the books is populated, well, it has a native poisonous butterfly that the natives, they're immune to their poison, but anybody else that comes to Noth dies from butterfly fever. So the Unsullied are dead, basically. They're going to arrive there and they're going to die. So long, Grey Worm. I think it would have been better to see you die in a trial by combat, or at least try to avenge your queen or whatever. But no, I mean, you end up dying of butterfly fever off screen, which is great. Anyway, moving on to other stuff that doesn't make any sense. Arya's story ends with her becoming a pirate, basically going out to explore the world. She's Christopher Columbus, and she's never expressed this interest before. I had a listener send me a message saying that no, she did write against the act when she was with the actress back in Bravo. She mentioned that she wanted to go west, blah, blah. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think that she meant that she wanted to go back west to Westeros, but I could be mistaken. Point is, I don't remember Arya ever showing any interest in anything other than vengeance. Legitimately, only thing that she's ever cared about has been vengeance. And other people have traveled west before. They just don't come back. I mean, one crew did come back and they were barely alive, a group of Hightowers, but they don't never show up in the story. And so, yeah, it's not like it's a big mystery. It's just there's nothing there. People just assume that it's a big ocean and you die before you can actually reach land. But whatever. Arya goes off and dies into the sea. Sansa then gets crowned Queen of the North, which I guess was somewhat of a fitting end for her. I mean, it's weird that she ended up being single. Every single male and their mother, every single male lord should have been after her like crazy because she's a fucking queen and of half the kingdom. And also she's super hot. But I guess she rejected everybody, which is fine. It's her prerogative. Then we have another weird thing. Bran, we never see Bran at court. I guess it's because they destroyed the Iron Throne. But we never see Bran being a king, except the small council meeting. That small council meeting, holy shit. Sam was a Grand Maester. Sam dropped out of college, basically. He's like a first-year dropout of medical school. Then he magically becomes the Grand Maester. How? Plus, they can't take any wives or have any children. And Sam has both. He also can't have any lands or titles, and he has both. So Samuel Tarly has broken every single vow he's ever made. He broke the Night's Watch vows. He broke the Maester vows, and now he's the Grand Maester somehow. Dude, Samuel Tarly is a pimp. Dude should have been there smoking like a cigar or something, being like, fuck you, I'm Sam the Slayer, I don't give a fuck, I break everybody's rules. So, good on him, I guess. Then, Bronn being chosen as the Master of Coin makes no fucking sense. The dude doesn't know how to read or write. Bronn actually as the Master of War would have made a little bit more sense. Not completely because the dude, I don't know how much he knows about military strategy, but so far we don't know it. But he knows a little, he's been in battles. So, again, doesn't make any sense there. I would not trust Bronn with my money. In fact, if I was Bronn and I'm the Lord of Highgarden, I would just be living it up like crazy. It's like, imagine being the King of France, or like the most powerful lord in France, medieval France. It would have been great. It would have been fantastic. Just drink wine all day. And he's single, surrounded by beautiful women. Would have been great. But no, dude wants to go to King's Landing, which is destroyed, and try to fix things. Because that sounds a lot like Bronn. A dude who wants to make the world better. Anyway, Davos asks the master of ships. It's fine. He knows ships. He's probably the best one there, best qualified. He's loyal. I'd keep him there. I thought it was weird that Bran didn't have a crown. I mean, all the other kings we saw had crowns, even Sansa. So Bran not having anything, being completely useless up to the end, I guess it's part of it. Then Tyrion being erased by history in the book made no fucking sense. Like, the Maester deleting... Okay, if Bronn appears in that book and Tyrion doesn't, that makes no fucking sense. At all. Because Bronn only entered this story because of Tyrion. The dude was the hand of the king for multiple kings. And he's completely erased from history. The dude killed the hand of the king too. Supposedly he killed the previous king too. So, how the fuck is Tyrion erased by history? He's a big part of this story. Maybe the biggest next to Daenerys. So, next to Daenerys and Jon, he's probably the biggest piece. So, how the fuck you delete him from history makes no fucking sense. Another thing that I didn't like is that Sir Podrick Payne, I guess, if he's part of the King's Guard, now he has to be celibate, which is sad. Podrick Payne, a celibate, is not something that I can see happening. But, I mean, he got his three-way out of the way in the north, so I guess he went out with a bang. And then the show closes out with Jon taking the logical solution and just breaking his vows once again, heading north with the wildlings. Because it doesn't really show you like he's doing a job. It shows you like he's actually just leaving. He takes ghosts and he's like, screw you guys, I'm not following your rules, I'm doing whatever I want. Now, we don't know if he's going to do the whole no children, no wives thing. I assume not, because John has a thing for wildlings. But it's okay. I said it Friday that I did not want John to just walk off into the sunset with Ghost in the north, but it could have been way worse. They could have made him, I don't know, start a democracy or something. But anyway, so that's what happened. Those are all the things that happened. My head hurts so much. And I've had a lot of people ask me the question, do I think that this is how things are going to end in the book? And honestly, John's story, I could see it ending that way, but I don't see John... Okay, I don't see John ever being Aegon Targaryen in the books, and I don't see John ever leaving the North. So if John stays throughout the story in the North, because his battle is in the North, every single one of John's struggles is in the North. So if he just stays there, stays true to his Night's Watch vows, I could see him just riding off into the sunset with Ghost to live with the wildlings. I could see him ending that way, and I'm fine with it. But let's move on to the Martin, because George R. R. Martin actually addresses this in a post. So as soon as the episode was over, George R. R. Martin, who's the author of the books, made a post in his blog saying how he felt about the show's ending. He made like a final farewell to the show, right? It's honestly a very beautiful letter. Well, it's not a letter. It's a very beautiful blog, and he posted it on his Twitter. So it's a very beautiful letter. It's, I don't know, 15 paragraphs. I'm not going to read it, but I'm just going to read one thing in particular that's relevant, okay? So, how will it all end? I hear people asking, the same ending as the show? Different? Well, yes, and no, and yes, and no, and yes, and no, and yes. End quote, okay? So that's what he says. Again, it goes with my theory that Jon Snow will probably go with the wolf into the sunset, but he'll never leave the North. So the books and the show are way too different. A lot of characters exist in the books that don't exist in the show. Some of them are alive that shouldn't be. Some are dead that shouldn't be. There's so many more plot lines, so many more players, so many things happening. For Winds of Winter, the thing that we're expecting is that it's been built up to 4 big battles, and they've been coined the Battle of Blood, the Battle of Ice, the Battle of Fire, and the Battle of Steel. All different players, all different areas of the map, all different stakes. So I've actually had people reach out to me and be like, dude, could you just tell us kind of how things are going in the book? Eddie said it the other day, if I could just tell him the story, that way he doesn't have to read it. I think it's a big project, but I might do it. If enough people reach out asking me to be like, dude, you know what, I'd like to hear the story. At least tell us set up the show how the way it ended, set up how the books ended so that we can understand. I might do it, but I don't know yet. Like I said, it would have to be enough people. Anyway, so the point is, George R. R. Martin posted that on his blog, and a lot of speculation going on. He did confirm that he's going to finish Winds of Winter at some point in the future. A lot of people are really upset. Now, the reason why I brought this up is because George R. R. Martin's Twitter is fantastic. Not because he's a fantastic writer. He's an amazing writer. Again, if you read that post, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful post. He's a fantastic writer. He's one of the greatest writers alive today. But, I mean, maybe even of all time. But his Twitter is phenomenal because of the comments section. Every single thing he posts is somebody saying, finish the fucking book. Finish the fucking book. After Daenerys lost her shit last episode, he posted something about another book series he's working on, and everybody was just giving him shit like, how can you do this to Daenerys? Fuck you, George. Keep your fucking books. How dare you do this to our character? Blah, blah. And to me, it's not fair because George didn't write that. I mean, it's possible that it ends that way, and Daenerys' story has always been set up to, is she crazy or is she not? He plays around with that. George doesn't like giving you things straight out. He kind of likes leaving things ambiguous. So I can get deeper into that later if people want. But the point is, it's not something that's going to show up out of nowhere. The problem is that the show rushed it. They rushed to the end instead of setting it up. They did not set things up properly, or it was terribly acted by Emilia Clarke. But either one's possible. But okay. So everybody always gives him shit for everything. So if you want to actually see how much it sucks to procrastinate, the problem with George, I lost my point. I'm going back to it. I have no issue with Winds of Winter taking another 10 years. I mean, I do have an issue. I have an issue, but I don't mind waiting if he says it's going to be the best version possible. Because dude's a slow writer, but as a slow writer, he's given us fantastic stuff. My issue is that he said it was going to be ready by a certain time, and he's been procrastinating. And you know how you feel all that weight on you when you procrastinate something? Imagine you tell somebody, imagine you tell your boss, I have this by tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you didn't do it. You're like, oh no, I'll have it by next week. And next week comes and you didn't do it. And no, I'll have it next month. And nothing. You start feeling all that pressure. Now imagine add that millions of fans on top of you, just nagging and nagging and nagging. They'd be like, dude, you promised us something. You promised us this. You were giving you our money, our hard-earned money. What the fuck? You said. And again, the issue was that he gave us kind of like a tentative release date. And he kind of fucked up there. So I don't mind waiting. Just don't give us any false hope. Because you gave us false hope in like 2016. And it's been a few years. I don't mind waiting. I just want it to be finished. But I don't mind waiting a little if it's going to be the best version possible. Because not everybody writes at the same speed. And the thing that I'm going on for his Twitter, the Martin, the fun fact is, go through his Twitter account, especially older posts. When the season started, this thing kind of changed. But throughout the year, every single thing he posts, usually the first fucking reply is saying, finish the fucking books. And some of these are brutal. Brutal. Like, I remember one where he posted that he was sad over the death of a friend. So he was writing, like, rest in peace, I'll miss you, blah, blah, you were a great friend, blah, blah. All that stuff. Very nice, very sweet stuff. Dude was sad because his friend died. And one of the comments, I think it was the very first comment, it said, she died waiting for your fucking book. And people are just fucking brutal, man. Brutal. And these are fans. The author doesn't owe you anything. But it's super fun. Honestly, it's super funny to watch people go crazy that way. So, for the fun fact of the Martin is that his life kind of sucks. At least being online has to suck for him because everybody is... I mean, the dude's worth millions of dollars. He's beloved. His work is beloved. But everybody on the internet is insane, and they're on top of him like crazy. There's nothing he can do that's right because everybody's giving him shit over it. And things that he didn't even do. Like, he's not responsible with how D&D decided to end the show, but he's the one that's taking shit for it. And people are clamoring like, no, so half of the people are like, George, please save us, finish the fucking book. The other half are like, how fucking dare you write some stupid piece of shit like that? So, there's no winning for him. He just needs to finish the book. But, again, I don't mind. Just take your pace, take your time. As long as it's good. I trust the guy. The dude's, like I said, an amazing writer. But he's a terrible procrastinator. I'll give him that. So that was the fun fact for today. And the fun fact is that his life sucks if you follow him online. It's gotta suck. Being online and being George R. R. Martin and being online, it's gotta suck. The amount of pressure that dude has to live with every single day. Because I read an interview recently that he said that he thinks it's stupid that people think that the book would not be released yet. Because there's a theory going that there's a backdoor deal with HBO where HBO asked that they don't release the show or the books, until the show's finished. So the theory goes that the books are finished. They're just not being released because HBO asked them not to because they're going to be so different from the show. And George responded with, that's idiotic. Like, my publishers would not sit on millions. Whenever these books are released, they're going to make millions of dollars. My publishers are not just going to sit on millions of dollars. When the books come out, it's good for the series. When the series comes out, it's good for the books. So one feeds the other. So it would be ridiculous to just be sitting on millions of dollars for other people. They would never allow that. And as he was saying that, I was like, dude, it's gotta suck to live with the pressure of knowing, fuck, I got people expecting millions of dollars from me, and I'm just sitting on it. I'm too slow. I promised it years ago, and I'm just sitting on it because I haven't finished it, and all the fans want it. My publisher wants it. It's gonna make them a lot of money. These people are depending on this money, and I'm just screwing everybody over, and it sucks that everybody hates me. And so I would not want to live with that pressure. I mean, would you? That would suck. So that's a fun fact for today. George R. R. Martin's life kind of probably sucks in that aspect. Everything else is probably pretty cool, but in that aspect, it's kind of sucks. And I went really long today. I went too long. My head's killing me, man. And I know I was all over the place. I couldn't hold it. I cleared out the show's office today, and there's 15 years worth of dust. So my allergies are killing me. So that's what probably sounded the way I did. And I was kind of all over the place. I'm sorry. Last episode was too much. It was really hard to keep focus. Really, really hard to keep focus on this one. But hopefully you kind of understood my points on everything. I promised that I would tell everybody how I would have fixed the show. I just haven't decided exactly how far back I'm going to go. Because if I just do this season, or I could go back to the point where the show separated from the books and do it from there, I don't know. I'll think where's a decent spot for me to go ahead and fix it. Because the easiest one is just the last season. But I never go for easy. I like the complicated things. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think would be a good spot to start my alternate version of Game of Thrones. And let me know if you want to hear me just tell you the story of the books. I'm not going to go through everything. For example, what I do is I'd be like, there's the Battle of Fire is happening in Marine. This is where every character is. This is what they're doing. And take it from there. So, I mean, I'd go a little bit deeper into it. Have you met me? I talk way too much. It's a problem. But let me know what you prefer. Because I still haven't made up my mind on all this. I missed a lot of news from over the weekend. There's a lot of trailers that dropped that looked really interesting. There's a lot of fun little interesting bits that happened that I will break down tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to have the return of Super Dario news, and which is actually a lot of fun. I'm actually starting to enjoy that segment, like quick news. I like it. And without getting too deep, but deep enough. So as always, if any of you want to contact me at Dario the Show on Instagram, you can always contact me there. Any comments, questions, or suggestions. If you have any more questions for me, always reach out. And I think I will start doing just answering questions through here. I think it's a lot of fun. I'll try to pick one day or one segment every day at the end, maybe to answer some of the questions. Because right now, I know I threw a whole bunch of info at you, and you probably have questions. Every single time I do a Game of Thrones podcast, I get a ton of questions from it. Like, oh, how about that? And I just answer everybody on Instagram. I don't know. I'll compile them, and I'll see how I'll do it. I'll figure it out and start testing things out. But anyway, okay, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It was a lot of information. I know, a lot. My head's killing me. Hopefully you did a lot better than I did. Hopefully it made sense. But as always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.